Thank you, listeners, for joining us. I'm your host, Lori Gilbert for KELK Radio. It is a pleasure to welcome our guest in studio today to talk about another aspect of safety and security, especially when it comes to your money. Today's guests are Lieutenant Rick Moore and Detective Brad Parvin, both from the Elko Police Department. And I'll start with you, Rick. I know it's okay to call you Rick because we've known each other a long time and you've been serving the community a long
Absolutely.
time.
Thanks for having us again today.
We appreciate your being on the program, Rick, and obviously you brought with you an experienced detective, and you and Brad have been working together a long time.
We have. This has been an issue that's affected the community many times over the course of the years. It's not just the Elko community, it's across the nation. And we put out public service announcements. We put out much information as we can on this. We want to get the message out again. We realize that people keep falling for this scam, and if we could just help one person not to maybe get the information out there, that people a little bit more educated on the inner workings of how these scams occur, then maybe they won't fall victim to them. That's why Detective Brad's here today to give us a little bit about a case that he's working on and exactly how that came to him, and then what he's done with it and what that looks like from a national perspective.
Well, thanks so much, Rick, and thank you, Brad, for being here today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate this opportunity. And, of course, before you were a detective, you were a patrol officer for many years, right?
About 9 years.
All right. So we appreciate that you are stepping into this role. And do you investigate just crimes of money, or what kinds of crimes do you investigate, Brad?
So all the detectives at the Elko Police Department are all general detectives. We might have something we specialize in, say like cryptocurrency or sexual assault investigations, stuff like that. But in general, we get a case, we'll work a little bit of everything from all the way up from a homicide all the way down to a fraud or a theft or something like that.
Pretty dedicated and versatile team, you'd have to say, right?
You have to be. Yeah, you have to change and be fluid and be able to do different things at different times whenever it comes up.
So, Brad, Detective Brad Parvin, Elko Police Department, what is on your desk currently? I know you were eager to come on the radio and talk about this cryptocurrency scam.
So currently, I do have 3 cryptocurrency cases, but this all started probably about, when I first came into detectives, we started having scams involving crypto, and obviously we know that's a big currency or medium for people with their money nowadays. And of course, if people are buying it and trading it and using it as money, there's going to be scams where people want to try to defraud you from your cryptocurrency. So I didn't have any training, anything like that. No one else in the division did. Honestly, I'm not a big computer person, electronic person, so I had no idea about how crypto worked. So I wanted to be able to learn more about it, to be able to investigate these things, or at least know where to send our cases to people who have more resources. And probably about 2 years ago, I ended up going back to Alabama to a place called NCFI, which is the National Computer Forensic Institute. Learned about cryptocurrency, how it works, all the different types of scams, and how to trace and seize those funds. That's not something that we do currently. It takes a lot more, and I can go into that, but we know how to get a hold of those people that can trace those scams and then seize those funds.
So, Brad, obviously there was a serious need for this, and that you would seek additional training. Any idea how much money maybe has been lost locally, or at least what you're looking at? How serious is this?
I'd say from the cases I've had locally, and again, that's just the ones that are reported, right? Not the ones that we don't know about, but I'd say they'd probably be close to around 70,000. But I know in the U.S. there's about 3.3 billion a year that's scammed out of people from cryptocurrency and through scams like this. Scams called pig butchering, which is basically like a romance, monetary, financial type of scam where it starts with the romance and the attraction or whatever common interest, and then moves into say, hey, I know how to make you some money, and this is how you do it. And then, of course, people give their money. So, but specifically right now, there is a crypto scam where people get called on the phone, basically told that they have a warrant out of their arrest because they have not been to jury duty. Of course, I'm sure we've talked about this before, the lieutenant has with you and on Facebook, but we will never call you and say, we would like to take payment for an outstanding warrant. We might, we'll see you in person, but that's something law enforcement will never do, or any government agency in general too. So, but yeah, it's a big deal worldwide. About 7.7 billion is scammed from victims, and again, that's reported also. The majority of these scams originate in places like China, North Korea, Cambodia, Southeast Asian countries. It started a lot during COVID. So let me just back up a little bit. I just realized I'm talking about a scam called a pig butchering scam. That's what I want to start with, and then I will go into the actual like phone call scams, if you don't mind, if that's okay.
Oh, that's perfect, Brad. No, this is your time. We appreciate it.
So specifically, one that we see a lot, in addition to the scam with warrants and being called on the phone, is what we call a pig butchering scam. And what that's basically stands for, or why it's called that in slang term, is because it basically fattens somebody up for the kill. And so they keep giving you communication as far as like love and interest, and then they tell you, hey, I'm really successful, and if you do this or talk to this person or go through this person, you can be successful with money too, invest in cryptocurrency. So that's why it's called that. But they're highly sophisticated. They're run by organized crime groups. And so this isn't just some random person, and they're specifically targeting Americans. The scammer basically gets a hold of you through social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Telegram, all those different social media sites. And they've researched their victim before they got in contact with them, because of course, and this is the thing about social media, when you post it, everybody knows what you're doing. So they're researching what you like and what interests you, and you're posting, and they get enough information on you that they're able to contact you and know what you're interested in. So there's obviously the common interest, then there's the romance that comes with it. They target people of all genders, races, ages. Obviously, we know elderly people are more susceptible to something like that, but this one's more actually for younger, I would say younger populations, because of the romance end of it.
So, and is it also known as catfishing, Brad, or is that kind of a different tangent? The catfishing is when you pose to be someone else, right?
Yeah, I've heard of the show. I don't really watch it, but that would be a similar term, I guess, that you could call it too, 100%. Because that's how you're building that trust with that person, where you get them to a point where they're able to do whatever the suspect wants.
Right.
So.
They seem credible. They have the information, as
Correct.
you said. They have personal details, and it seems believable, especially if you're vulnerable. So, and we want to continue talking about pig butchering before we get into the calls too. But I want to make sure people understand what cryptocurrency is. So there's Bitcoin, there's Ether. It is not, though, PayPal, Venmo, debit cards or credit cards, right?
Correct. Those are like cash apps, basically. Crypto is something completely different. It's just like an electronic currency, basically. And there's a number of different types. And it's decentralized. That's the big thing about it, is it's not centrally controlled by any type of government, and that's what the users of crypto like about it, and they prefer it that way.
Right, because then they can entice you and tell you you're going to get rich, you're going to get 20% on your return. I mean, again, it just depends. They may start off with this friendship, as you said, and then said, oh, hey, by the way, wanted to let you know about this opportunity, right?
Right.
And then they can sweep your account.
Right. I will say that there are legitimate uses for crypto. So I'm not saying all crypto is a scam. I'm just saying it's easier to scam people using crypto.
All right. So back into maybe some of the warning signs or what you want people to know about pig butchering.
Yeah. So basically the big thing is eventually it's going to turn from this romance interest or whatever into a financial discussion. And they won't ask you specifically themselves for money. Okay, they won't say, hey, I need money because of whatever this type of situation, but they'll say, oh, I just had this great opportunity, or this guy just made me a bunch of money, or I can sign you up for this type of class and you can learn how to make money yourself, or this is the app I used, and that can be a scammer app specifically designed to scam somebody, or it could be a legitimate app where the scammer can manipulate what you're seeing on your screen and the results and the numbers and everything like that. You end up investing the money, basically. You see that you're making a return, or at least you think you are, right? And then when you go to withdraw the money, you can't withdraw it. And then the final thing sometimes that they do is they say, oh, well, you can't withdraw without a tax, a crypto tax. Well, there's no such thing as that. So that's an additional way they try to get your money even after they've already got some of your money. And then the third and final way is if someone's really desperate and they want to try to get their money back, they'll have somebody contact them, another scammer, saying, hey, we work for this crypto recovery company.
Wow.
And we can get your crypto back, get your money back. So there's a number of different ways to work that angle. But yeah, it's a big thing. It's organized, and what I would tell people to try to keep from being victims is to look at the messaging that these suspects are sending you. It's not going to be the normal type of like verbiage or words that, or slang that we use as Americans when we text or talk to people. It's going to be completely different because it's people from other countries. And a lot of times they portray themselves to be somebody from another country to explain away why they're talking like they do. So it's a big thing. It's a problem.
So a lot to take in, certainly. And you can see why, if someone is listening and they have been a victim of this, or they have a relative, someone they care for that's been a victim, it can be kind of embarrassing, right? To look back and say, I can't believe I fell for that.
Yeah, and that happens all throughout law enforcement with a number of different types of crimes. People feel embarrassment. So especially with this, because it's a trust thing, and then they can't believe that they've been scammed, and it's they don't want to talk about it. They feel ashamed. So
yeah.
And I'm sure there's a number of people that have been victims in our community that haven't made those reports for those reasons.
Making reports could help, though. I mean, it's not as though they're entirely untraceable. That's part of this conversation, right? Is that you have been able to follow up on some leads. It's not likely that victims will get their assets back.
Yeah. So like I was talking about, it's highly organized in other countries with pig butchering. Most of the time, there's no recourse with the suspect. We're not able to apprehend them. They're in another country. It is possible for Secret Service and other larger agencies that have the tools to be able to trace and try to seize some of those crypto funds, but it's pennies on the dollar from what the victims actually put in. So it is very, very difficult. And that's kind of the difference, I guess, between the pig butchering and then the warrants scam fraud that I was talking about earlier. I'll kind of get into that. This case specifically that I had 3 cases. The suspects are in the United States, specifically associated with prison gangs out of Georgia, and the Georgia Department of Corrections. So if you have had a phone call and they were told that you had a warrant for your arrest and you ended up withdrawing money and placing it into a crypto ATM, there is a possibility that those suspects could be identified and then located, arrested, and then prosecuted for that. So that is a possibility. If I'm sure there's more than 3 people. I'm sure people in the county too have been victims, not just here in the city. So
do you want people to make reports, Brad?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'd like to try to prevent it before it ever happens, but when people are victims, make a report, and we will follow those leads and try to make sure that we can send it. If I can't do anything with it because they're out of area, I can send it to the proper authorities. These cases specifically I talked about are being sent to a federal task force, Secret Service task force, that have identified suspects, and it's a very large case. And also the Attorney General out of Georgia is investigating it too. So our contacts too help us. So even if we're not able to do it all by ourselves, we're able to find the people that can help.
Brad Parvin is a detective with the Elko Police Department as we're talking about the latest cryptocurrency scams, and we want to prevent this type of crime in our community to heighten awareness and to create more opportunities for people to, help one another to say, that doesn't sound right. Maybe don't respond to that, or if you have been victimized, to make a report. And I also wanted to add that just in the basic research I did, Brad, if people are feeling ashamed or embarrassed about reporting or knowing that you've been scammed, this happened to police officers, to firefighters and first responders. It wasn't that long ago that in 2022, a New Jersey corrections officer, former, obviously, New Jersey corrections officer, orchestrated 2 different fraud schemes involving cryptocurrency, and he targeted emergency responders, police, fire personnel, EMTs with a crypto pension that he called the Blazer token fraud. And he got, he raised more than $620,000 and then cashed in on 41 billion of his own Blazer tokens. Now, fortunately, we know about this because we're talking about it, but the value of Blazer never recovered. Most investors lost everything that they had, and that was their retirement fund.
Right.
So just know that it happens to the best of people, that these kinds of mistakes can happen. So we also want to just remind folks of some of the basics, right, Brad, to avoid business, government, or job impersonators. As you started out saying, no legitimate business or government will ever email, text, or message you on social media to ask for money, and they certainly don't call you.
Right. Yeah. If someone has a warrant out for the arrest, we'll be knocking on their door. We might say, hey, you have a warrant. If you want to take care of it, come down to the sheriff's department, the police department, but we're never going to ask for payment.
And you shouldn't click on unexpected texts if it seems to come, even if it seems to come from a company that you're familiar with, right? Because they're also disguising themselves.
Yeah. So I've seen that with emails and texts. Basically, they change one part of a message or an email address or anything like that, and it looks legitimate, like it's a legitimate business transaction where they give you a routing number. I mean, not necessarily with crypto, but with wiring funds from your account to another account. It's just, you got to be vigilant and double check that stuff and make sure that is the accurate account and with the company that you're actually doing business with, not just all communication through email.
Exactly. Even if it looks like your bank letterhead or your utility or whoever you do have a legitimate connection with. And another category I understand is you should never pay a fee to get a job. Yeah,
no, that's actually, if I could go back just real quick, as far as paying fees and stuff like that, that's part of the pig butchering scam. Is the people that are actually scamming us Americans are actually a lot of times victims themselves too, because they've been scammed into going to where they're at and forced to actually work 16 hours a day or whatever to try to work off their debt because they're being promised a lucrative IT job, but their job is to scam Americans, and that's all they do. So there's a lot of human trafficking that goes in with that in those Southeast Asian countries to scam Americans. So it's very complicated process. And then of course a lot of those countries, there's no recourse there because the government is complicit with it too, because it makes money. That's gross domestic product of a lot of those countries.
Wow, that's just devastating to hear. I did hear a report about that too on public radio, Brad, that one of these, and they're in warehouses and they're just sitting at those computers. So I want to make sure that we are getting to all of the aspects. Again, scammers go to great means to separate you from your money. And even if it seems like a small amount, we used to hear in the past about, I think did you call it wire fraud or telegrams? People would send money that way too?
Yeah. So you'll have that. Again, that starts a lot of times with emails, and then so that's a common fraud scheme. It's never gone away. Before cryptocurrency was the medium, a lot of times when I was on patrol, you'd respond to a store because a vigilant clerk had seen somebody that's on the phone and they're buying prepaid Visa cards, and they'd say, hey, no, you can't buy these. This is a scam. We don't want to sell these to you. And I remember going and talking to a kid that was still on the phone, talking to the scammer. When I got there, I'm standing in front of him. in a uniform telling him this is a scam, hang up, I'm the police, so and it took some serious convincing. So that just gives you an idea of how articulate these scammers are and how much fear they put into their victims.
I was just going to say, could be articulate, often a combination, charming, as you said.
Sure.
Once they get to know someone, if it starts out with a social media scam, Brad. So we just want to remind people that, there are other ones that are more threatening too, other scams, like calling an elderly person and saying, your grandson is in jail.
Yep, that's a common one too. Right. In jail, or we have them and we won't release them until this, is paid. And of course, an elderly person, fearful for family and, maybe not up to date on all the different types of scams or not in contact with other people in the community or friends and family, they're going to pay.
So obviously we want to protect the people that we care about. And as you said, it took some convincing. What could compel a person to really, separate with their money in that way? For example, if you think back to the boy that you had to convince, what was he so convinced that he was going to gain from that?
I'm not for sure, but I believe that he was an employee of one of the fast food restaurants. So there was that version of the scam too, where they call and say, this is corporate. They're closing the employee, legitimate employee is closing the business, tell them to take the money out of the till. We need this money by this time and date or whatever, or this is going to happen. And then go and take that money from the till, the cash from the till, and buy the prepaid Visa cards, and then give us the numbers on the cards. So I think in that case, that's what that was. Yeah, and I know it sounds crazy, but it happens and still happens. There's still the credit card scams, prepaid, are still happening even on top and with the crypto. It's not like one replaced the other. They're still happening too.
Right. Even more sophisticated and evolving,
right.
Certainly as the technology allows. Brad Parvin is a detective with the Elko Police Department. We're talking about these scams and the seriousness of them. And, they leave an indelible mark on the victims, and they can destroy livelihoods, relationships. They can wipe out retirements. There are a lot of really devastating consequences. And something else, too, that I know we haven't mentioned, but it's also an important part of the work you do with Elko Police Department, you and other detectives, sextortion, right? And a lot of people are falling for that. I mean, sadly, they're participating in it and
right.
then being devastated by that.
Yeah, there's the version of that where, of course, people think they have that, again, a relationship with somebody, and they send pictures to someone they've never met. And then obviously the suspect reveals themselves that they're not who they expected, and if they don't pay a ransom or a sum, they're going to release them to friends, family, community, all that type of thing too. So that's another version of there's so many different versions, but the key is, especially with electronic media and stuff like that, social media, you're always safer if you've actually physically seen and talked to that person and know who they are, because you can be whatever you want to be on the computer. So it's best to always do those types of transactions with legitimate organizations that you can vouch for through a number of different means, not just electronically, say actually talking to another person, or just actually seeing that person, physically seeing that person and talking to that person like we're doing now.
Right.
So.
Thank you, Brad. Brad Parvin is our local police detective with the Elko Police Department. Something else that might be empowering to people listening or friends and family is that these are crimes that are committed, and the victims are just that. They are victims. They shouldn't be made to feel like, they were part of a crime or that they did something wrong, because especially in the case of sextortion, when young people are targeted, Brad, we know that that can have life-altering consequences for them. They should know that they did nothing wrong, that it is a crime to extort someone in that way.
Right, absolutely. We always, like we talked about before, we always want people to feel like they can come forward and talk to us and be honest with us. I wish I had one of my co-workers here right now that was able. She probably had more cases regarding sextortion, because that's basically, as far as like sex crimes, that's what she works with. But we do have someone like her that specifically works with those, and then we do have victim advocates that are able to help people work through this and through the whole process in the investigation, and then hopefully that there's a prosecution where we're able to identify the person and prosecute them.
So do feel confident if you have been targeted by sextortion, even if you were in a relationship and then maybe some intimate photos or some video or something that was exchanged without your consent, you are a victim in that, and you can and should report that. And as you mentioned, Brad, especially with children, we have a dedicated center now, the Great Basin Child Advocacy Center, and that is all they do is protect children and families.
Absolutely. We have a full-time detective over there, Detective Cassie Wiley, who takes those types of cases. And then there's also a detective from the Sheriff's Department. So, and then, if we need to, other detectives can also work those, but that's specifically what they do over there for children. And then they have resources over there beyond just the detectives being over there. So whether it's exams or mental health or anything like that. So.
Well, thanks, Brad. That's so important to remind people. And we do want to remind parents that you're in charge. Your kids are heading back to school. They usually have a phone in hand, right? And are there important things, either if Rick or Brad want to talk about that?
As far as you mean like phone safety with children? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would say the big thing, I'm not a parent, but if the best thing you can do is monitor everything that your child's doing on the phone. I know there's phones specifically for that or monitoring apps for that. You just never know who they're meeting online. It's just incredibly scary. I can't even imagine it's probably just because of my job, but I can't even imagine being a parent trying to raise a child with the access to the internet and all these different things that they have access to nowadays. I'd say monitor it or decide whatever type of age they're able to understand and manage what's out there and tell them and share with them the repercussions and how there are a lot of bad people out there that want to do them harm or take advantage of them. So.
Even apps or games that are targeting, they're designed for children, seemingly innocent, right? And they can encounter strangers.
Minecraft is a perfect example of it. You don't know who you're talking to on the other end unless you have a specific group and friends. But there are filters on there to be able to make it so it's only people you know or people you're already friends with. But then those filters can be off. If you don't know about it, they could talk to anybody, adults, on Minecraft, playing Minecraft. So, and that's like that with a number of different games, all online games.
Brad Parvin is our police detective, and we do want to remind listeners that as you are heading back to school, we have school resource officers who also care a great deal, and they're in that social scene. They're on campuses. They're talking to teachers and parents and students often who come to them with concerns, and people should continue to use that as a resource.
Yeah, absolutely. The school resource officers are a huge resource. Even before I was a detective, as a patrol officer, they took a lot of the child and school-related stuff off our hands so we could focus on other fires we were running into, for lack of a better term. But they're really great for proactive type of enforcement, and then also trying to prevent things from happening, which may, the child may be a victim or may later on involve us. So that's the whole point of the school resource officers, and then be able to try to work out those things, of course, that happen with students at school and disagreements and such like that before they blow up and get bigger.
Yes. So if you are a student and you've been bullied online, or you feel like you've been threatened in some way, you can literally take your device to a school resource officer, and they will handle it with care and confidence, but they will make sure that you're safe. And that's the most important thing, because bullies like to make you feel like you're not safe.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the whole point of, I like to think of law enforcement and the good that we do in the community is try to protect the innocent and those that can't protect themselves from those bullies. So,
well, Brad, you've done an excellent job in that today, and we really appreciate the time that you've given us to talk about these very serious topics. In closing, or I want to make sure we got to all your topics today.
I pretty much covered it. The big thing, again, just to reiterate, is law enforcement agencies may advise you have a warrant, but we will never, ever ask for payment over the phone. So just that is the big thing. And then if you have somebody on the phone that's trying to keep you on the phone and doesn't want you to talk to anybody else or talk to any other people around you that you're going to interact with, that should be a key too, because they're trying to either cause some type of harm or take advantage of you in some way.
So hang up the phone, and then if you need help with your device, right, your social media account or whatever it is, and you are self-conscious about it, if you don't have someone in your family or friends to ask, you can take it to your carrier, the provider, and they'll make sure that you can block that person, right?
Yeah, I mean, most phones now are able to individually block certain numbers and stuff like that. I know I can do that on my iPhone, but I know even before you could do it on your phone, you're right. You had to go to a carrier and ask them, hey, can I block this number? So absolutely. Yep.
Just don't hesitate to reach out, but to get some help, you can do that through the Elko Police Department. So Detective Brad Parvin, best way to reach you if people listening to this program or if they have other concerns or concerns about what we've talked about today.
Yeah, so you can call the Elko Police Stations. It'll be 775-777-7310, and then there's going to be an automated phone message system, and my extension is 77327. So again, it's 775-777-7310, and then my extension 77327.
And listeners, I know that if you have concerns about a police cruiser coming up to your house for any reason, you can just reach out to any of these officers, to Detective Brad Parvin directly, and you can arrange to have a more confidential meeting. They don't have to come to your house.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what happens is, Lori, what we try to do is have everything start through patrol officers and go through patrol officers. That's how we're able to triage everything that we have. But yeah, we can absolutely, after that officer takes that initial report, it doesn't have to take a lot of detail, but it always helps the more detail we have. Absolutely, we'll set something up with any time to talk to that person if they have a problem or they're a victim of crime.
Okay, and get the process started.
Yes,
all right.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Brad?
No, that's it. Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate the time that you spent with us. Lieutenant Rick Moore is here alongside Detective Brad Parvin. Do you think we hit all the high points, Rick?
Yeah, most of them. I just want to close with, if somebody's talking to somebody that's representing themselves from a law enforcement agency, no legitimate police officer or investigator will be offended if you say, hey, I just need to make sure that I'm talking to who I think I'm talking to, and calling the station. Ask to go through either dispatch, have them connected that way, or through their supervisor or something like that. We're very cognizant and sensitive that all these scams are out there. Not going to offend any legitimate law enforcement officer. So if you're talking to somebody and they do seem offended, that's a red flag that you're dealing with a scammer and not a legitimate law enforcement officer.
Okay, good point. And another jumping off topic for another day.
I think so.
All right. Thank you both again for being here today. We appreciate your time. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Rick. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for Elko Live. You can find this program archived online at elko-radio.com, and we're streaming anywhere that you can stream your device. You can pick us up. Thank you for joining us at elko-radio.com and here on Elko Live on air at KELK.